What do the Jaguars do with wide receiver Calvin Ridley? Let's talk about it. Now, guys, this video is brought to you by BetUS. And, guys, the Super Bowl is over, but BetUS does not sleep, man. Super Bowl 59 odds are already out, okay? And the Jaguars have the 14th best odds to win the Super Bowl at plus 3,000. And look, there's other NFL bets you guys can make. There are futures on the NFL draft, like who will be drafted number 1 overall, who will be the first non-quarterback taken. A lot of different stuff over there, and also different sports, whether you're an MLB guy, which the season is coming up, or an NBA guy, or many other things. All that will be available to you on BetUS, and BetUS is going to give you a 125% deposit bonus on your first 3 deposits. Okay, guys? So 24/7 customer service, quick 24-hour payouts. Shout out to BetUS for sponsoring this video. Now let's talk a little bit of Calvin Ridley. So in my Jaguar free agency video I made a few days ago about different guys to target for the Jacksonville Jaguars, I realized when I was talking about the wide receivers just how loaded that position group is when it comes to what the heck do the Jaguars do there. I mean, when you look at the position, there are 2 roster locks, okay? There are Christian Kirk and Parker Washington. There are a couple unrestricted free agents, most notably Jamal Agnew and Calvin Ridley, who is the topic of this video. And there's also fringe roster players like, Zay Jones. I mean, if the Jaguars cut him, they can save $4.4 million of cap space. So there's a question mark there about, what they should do there. And, there's also like Jacob Harris, Tim Jones, Elijah Cooks, guys that at the Jaguars cut, not many people will really blink an eye to it, okay? And then there's Calvin Ridley. Okay, we'll talk about Calvin Ridley. Now, Calvin Ridley's 2023 season, he had 76 receptions, which was 29th in the NFL. He had 1,016 yards, which was 25th in the NFL. And he also had 8 touchdowns, which was 8th in the NFL. Okay, now the Jaguars are found with a really tough and honestly weird dilemma, because a lot of times in the past, it's like, oh, this guy's going to be a free agent. Let's just re-sign him. And then boom, bada bing, you have him on the team again. But with the Jaguars trading for Calvin Ridley at the 2022 deadline, we all know that on the other end of that, there were a few different things going on. Okay. There was the Jaguars gave up a 2023 pick, but also there was a 2024 conditional pick involved in it. Okay. And the strings attached are basically like, it could be a 5th, 4th, 3rd, or 2nd round pick. Okay. Now it's elevated to a 3rd round pick because of different things that Calvin Ridley did. However, if the Jaguars re-sign him to a multi-year deal right now, the Jaguars will be giving up a 2nd round pick. Okay. But if they either franchise tag him or let Calvin Ridley go into free agency, all you're doing is giving up a 3rd round pick. So, and a franchise tag to me is out the window because it's looking more and more by the day. Each day that Josh Allen doesn't get a new contract, that Josh Allen will get the franchise tag. Okay, that's what Trent Baalke's been doing ever since he's been the GM. Is giving, he gave Cam Robinson a franchise tag in 2022, re-signed him in April. Gave Evan Ingram a franchise tag in 2023, re-signed him in July. It's just what he does. And with all that, the Jaguars do need wide receivers, okay? They've invested money in wide receivers, but they haven't really invested draft capital. And when I look at this situation, to me, this the whole 2nd round pick thing, that's a deal breaker for me, okay? Like, I wouldn't mind re-signing him, but the fact that re-signing him to a new deal is going to elevate that draft pick from a 3rd round pick to a 2nd round pick, that's a complete deal breaker for me, because the Jaguars just need too many. It's just drafts are so critical, okay? And I know people are going to say, oh, well, what's the point? Trent Baalke's going to mess up the draft anyway. I'm not going in with that mentality, okay? Look, I am as much of a Trent Baalke hater as the next guy, but I can't go into these different seasons saying, oh, well, Trent Baalke's going to ruin it, so let's just re-sign him, okay? That's not really my logic with that. So what I would do if I was the Jaguars is, I'm still interested in Calvin Ridley. I would just be a team that I would let him hit free agency and then try to maybe sign him to a new deal. Now, that's going to be really, really tough. You always see when players hit free agency, very rarely do they re-sign, with their previous team. we'll see with Calvin Ridley. I know that, he apparently wants to be back at Jacksonville. He was out of football for a while, and it took him a little bit to learn the playbook. So I don't know if he wants to rush to another location. But, you're basically saying, wink, nod, go to free agency, we're going to re-sign you. But then all of a sudden, 31 other teams have equal rights to you to sign him as anybody else does. And then they get into the bidding war, and then he's probably going to go to the highest bidder. That's the way it works in the NFL. These players have very, very short NFL careers when you look at the lifespan of their life. You know what I mean? So they got to take the most money while they can. So, yeah, you definitely run the risk of another team snagging him, but that would be my ideal situation. Now, when you look at the Jaguars roster right now, look, Christian Kirk is definitely here to stay. And, with Jamal Agnew gone, I think Parker Washington is a good player to fill his role. While Parker Washington, I think, day one of 2024 doesn't offer you the same abilities on kick and punt return. I think he's a better receiver than Jamal Agnew. And quite frankly, the Jaguars, that's a position where the Jaguars can save some money. Okay. This is what the draft is for. Okay. You draft guys on day 3 of the draft like Parker Washington to replace Jamal Agnew. You draft guys like Antonio Johnson to replace Rayshon Jenkins. You know what I mean? That's what it's for. And, one thing that is that every other wide receiver spot is seemingly up for grabs. And, regardless, wide receiver definitely needs to be addressed. And, free agency for me, I need to spend money in free agency. Okay. And I need to spend money on on the trenches. Okay. Re-sign Josh Allen, bring in some defensive linemen, bring in some offensive linemen. And, I want to be able to make sure that in free agency, we're spending money on those units. And then we're addressing like wide receiver, cornerback, and that kind of stuff in the draft. Okay. That's kind of my main thing. And for wide receiver, with that said, you still got to do something in free agency because, look, we don't have many players left. I mean, with Jamal Agnew hitting free agency, potentially Calvin Ridley going, and you're leaving some spots open. Okay, so with that said, you're probably going to have to go cheaper in free agency at wide receiver if you're going to be spending on the offensive and defensive line. So that'll probably leave the Jaguars with like a Noah Brown or like a Van Jefferson or like a Josh Reynolds, those type of C tier players to be able to just fill spots that hopefully the Jaguars will be able to draft, and those guys will be the starters. You know what I mean? So with me, invest in offensive and defensive line in free agency, and then invest in wide receiver in the draft. That's just my take. So when it comes down to Calvin Ridley, like I said, I'm letting him hit free agency, and hopefully we can find a deal that makes sense for both sides that doesn't cost the Jaguars a second round pick. But I think he's a good player. It's just I think in 2023 he had a season that it wasn't a terrible season, but I think a lot of people were disappointed. I think a lot of us were kind of hoping that he would have the impact that like Stephon Diggs had over in Buffalo, but the Jaguars just didn't get that. But he is a good receiver. But, there were some concerns, most notably that it seemed like he never fully understood the playbook. It seemed like he wasn't clutch at clutch moments. And he's also going to be like 30 next year. You know what I mean? He's not like a spring chicken in any sense. So, yeah. We'll see what happens. Let me know what you guys think. This is definitely an interesting conversation to have. And thank you to BetUS for sponsoring this video. Like I said, 125% deposit bonus on your first 3 deposits. Thank you guys for watching. Go Jags.